Hey guys! So, today we're going to talk a little bit about transparency when you're working. So let's get into it. Now, I'm not going to say too much because every job is a little bit different, but for those of you who may be new to programming or new to IT or professional level software development and so forth, you may not know this, but it's very common these days that you have some type of what we call workflow, or you have a work paradigm. Now, things such as agile development and Scrum and all that good stuff is something that is very popular these days. Now, I personally have been working most of the time with Kanban boards and stuff of that nature, where you have your story cards and you have the different columns that kind of represents just the flow of where you are in the development process. And you see, something that I used to fight quite a bit was this idea of having to represent everything that I did with a small story card and kind of, put it on the board to kind of illustrate that, all right, this is what I'm doing, this is the description, and kind of a short explanation as to why that is. And the reason why I used to not really have much use for that was that I was working very much in isolation, and it's only now that I'm starting to get to a point where things are starting to slip through the cracks. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that you will get to a point where I at least got to this point, where you're working on different things and your boss will start coming to you and ask, why aren't you finished? Well, because I'm still working on it. And he kind of goes, well, but we said that this would only take this amount of time. And when he or she poses that, makes that statement, I thought that you should be done by now. Like, why are you taking such time? Like, why are you taking that amount of time? The problem there is that at least I have a hard time remembering what it was that I did, so that I can kind of justify why things are taking the time they take. Because when you start out as a junior, it may be because you're a little bit inexperienced, and things takes longer, or the estimation is off, like the scope was not really correctly set, or the expectations were not correctly set, and all that good stuff. For me, these days, it actually is flattering enough, because I need to help other people with their work, which is pretty cool. Well, it's very nice to be able to help out, because it wasn't all that long ago I was in this position where I kind of had to have a senior that helped me with my stuff and ask questions and so forth. And now it's my turn to give that back to one of my junior coworkers, or rather a few of my junior coworkers, where if they have an issue with their working environment, or if there's something wrong with Webpack or their pipeline or anything like that, usually they come to me. And although it's great fun to be able to help out and provide some assistance to your coworkers, that's time that is slipping away from my own workflow and my own work process. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, we are encouraged to help out our coworkers, and we should help out our coworkers. But the thing that I realized very quickly was that this time ships away at the perceived time that I am to spend on what I do. And unless I represent that, or somehow create a little bit of traceability into what I'm actually doing, what I'm spending my time on, my manager will start asking questions. So basically, the rule that I did for my own sake, which I think is at least it helps me, is that if I know that something takes 5 minutes, I don't really care so much about putting up a story card or doing anything about that, because that's too little. That's not that much time, right? But as long as if I'm doing anything that takes over half an hour, I'll just make a story card for it. I just put it up into the board, and it serves as an indicator to my manager that I'm sitting on multiple shares at the same time, and it also helps me just remember what I did. It's the same trick I use for when I'm working on a piece of software, when I'm gonna go home for the day. I mean, I'm a very forgetful person. I always forget stuff. So what I like to do is that I create a unit test or something of that nature, and just make it fail. that's it basically, because if I have a failing unit test in my suite or something of that nature, I know that as soon as I come back and I just try to run my code, it's going to tell me that, oh, this is wrong, and then I kind of get a mental bookmark for what I was doing the day before. So all I can say is that it works very using a workflow. So I would like to say Jira, for example. Jira is immensely popular. If you're not familiar with Jira, I highly suggest that you have a look at it. It's I've used it in quite a few projects, and for different companies it's very, very popular. And having workflows and Kanban boards and story cards, it helps a lot actually. So if you're not doing that at your place of work, I highly recommend that you have a look at it. And as I said, respect your stories enough to actually create a card for everything that you're doing, even if it's not that like something that is a story, if you will, or an epic or something like that, because every piece of like all the hours that you're putting into your work is the work that you're putting in, and you should represent that so that it becomes transparent to you and your coworkers and your managers what you're actually doing, and so that they understand that when you come and say that, oh, I'm going to be delayed a day or two on the thing that I'm working on, instead of asking why, and you not having an answer, you can just point to the board and say, well, yeah, I have had to help out Bob, John, and Jane with their things, and there was some production issues, yada yada yada, and you can just kind of illustrate. Then that time is accounted for, which makes a much nicer thing to say. It's much nicer to be able to say that than anything else. So apart from that, the last thing I will say is that try to use the story cards and like things like the comment section of the story cards as much as humanly possible. One thing that I find to be very common is that you have a storyboard that represents the stuff that you're working on, and then you have all these small discussions between yourself that changes the specification that was written to begin with. And you come to agreement, and there's issues, and there's kind of change of scope and all these discussions. Try to do your best to just use the comment section to always append all the decisions that are being made on behalf of a story, because when it's very like if you ever come to a point where you don't know why the story description or like the scope of the feature is saying one thing, but the thing that is in production is completely different, it's very nice to have like a conversation flow where everybody's really stuck to saying that, all right, we made this decision, we decided to make it red instead of blue, and we did this instead of that because of this and that. Then it becomes like a history where you can just read through, okay, this is why we took these decisions, and this is why we arrived at this point where the feature doesn't reflect what we originally decided on. It's just a micro tip, and hopefully you will have as much benefit from using Scrum or Kanban boards as I have. Have a great day.